And what does substantive equality mean? Like, you know, some of us are happy, we lived on a scarcity principle for so long, happy for the few crumbs thrown our way. Well, our kids have endured a lot. They're enduring a lot. And they're gonna need more supports than other children in order to achieve the outcomes that they deserve. So a Supreme Court justice in the United States said that there's no greater inequality than equal treatment of unequals. And we gotta make sure that provinces, the federal government doesn't do that, but we also owe that duty to our own kids. And we have to do what Grand Chief has taught us and young people have taught us, which is to embrace the diversity of our own kids. We ought to embrace all those young people who are gender diverse, who have different sexual orientations. We have to embrace children who maybe are differently abled. We have to embrace all of that and respect and honor their human rights to be who they are too. When it comes to funding, one of the things that I've been made to learn is that the level is probably the least important thing when you're negotiating funding. What you really want to get right is the funding purpose, the funding principles and definitions, and the structure, because you can enforce all that in court. You literally cannot get an order for a government to spend more. But what you can do is say, if they breach the purpose or if they breach the structure of that funding, then they would have to fix it, and that's how we got the $22.5 billion over 5 years, is because they did all those things, right? So we have got, thankfully, some good people out there in finance. Anybody here working with finance with CFS? Yeah, see? These are the people who know how the money works. Like, and there's some of us out there who are learning. So bring them around the table, you know? Don't just go off an Excel spreadsheet. It's far more sophisticated than that. I've been doing it now, working on the funding issue for 25 years. And I consider myself a rookie, and I would not sit across the table with Canada without these finance people, without the people like IFSD, and without my colleagues from across the country. Learn how the money goes. Dean New told us about this, didn't he? If you haven't ever read his book, Accounting for Genocide, you should read it. Because he said whatever governments can't get in a self-government agreement, they get in a funding agreement. Proceed with due diligence. You know, sometimes it's something like it's been taken away from us for so long. You know, when I think about self-government, I don't think of it kind of as self-government. I think of it as freedom. And Canada has put chains on us. And they've done it for so long, sometimes we put chains on ourselves. And our opportunity now is to break those chains, to become more conscious of not only the colonial patterns in the government, but our behavior that reinforces those things. And I'll use myself as an example. Some of you in this audience remember seeing little Cindy show up in 1997 because the director of the IS-Mun program couldn't make this meeting to Ottawa. So people like Linda George and others, they sent me on the flight. And I thought, oh my God, what did they do? And I sit around this table and all these brilliant people. And I remember the government, and I thought, well, they had to know how they were underfunding, because I saw people like Linda and Kathy Nahaney who are here. Can we just give an applause for them? They are amazing. They are my teachers. They were doing incredible work back then on almost nothing. I thought, we just have to prove it to the government. They're underfunding this. We'll come up with some solutions, and they'll deal with it. It's about little kids. And I got sucked right in there, did the whole thing, came up with everything. And then I thought, oh, good, now what my next project is. And the government says, we'll review it, that's an excellent report, and they do nothing. And then round number 2 happens. Well, that study's now too old. We need a new study. Get to work on a new study. And whose hand goes in the air? Right? So we do the second study, but thankfully there are people much smarter than I did. They said, look, we're going to get the best experts in the country. Because if we need them as expert witnesses, we're going to call them, and Canada will not be able to get anybody else. And that's what we did. We got the best experts in the country to show it. And then we were also taught a very important lesson by an elder that I hope that I will never forget. And he said, never fall in love with the Caring Society. And never fall in love with your business card. Only fall in love with the children, because there will come a day when you have to sacrifice both those things for them. That's loving justice. So we are the only national organization that does not have a contribution agreement with any government that's Indigenous. And there needs to be more of us. And you need to support us by buying Spirit Bear books. Don't forget about Jordan's Principle. As you're focused on child and family, think about how many Jordan's Principles intersecting, just like our laws are. Keep an eye on what's happening with Jordan's Principle. Tomorrow is about self-government. It is about child and family services. Watch those hearings. Hold us to account. We'll be there arguing. If you don't agree with what we're saying, you let us know. There's a lot of work to be done to cost out Jordan's Principle, and what we're finding already is that it is plugging holes in other underfunded programs by the federal government. We need to plug those holes. We need to stop asking ourselves for just equity in child welfare, but substantive equality across all aspects of children's lives. And we need to demand no less of ourselves than to push every button to achieve that. Here are some of the questions. What is your traditional law? And did you have a child welfare law? Can you get jurisdiction in child welfare? Is that the right question to be asking? Or is it to reclaim those family laws? How are you going to model those laws in advance? There's nothing stopping us from modeling those laws in advance. So let's give it a trial period before we get the authority. Show them what we're made of. Show our children how much we love them. How are you going to deal with those big drivers, those drug dealers who have got the pharmaceutical guides and everything else? How are we going to get out in front of them so that our kids aren't traumatized, so that they don't turn to drugs? Those are some of the big questions. I've told you already what we hear about the jurisdictional approach, and I'm out of time.
You have 10 minutes.
I have 10 minutes? The clock is wrong?
Yes. Well, 9 minutes now.
Oh, okay. You did that on purpose, didn't you? Okay. So what we're hearing about Canada's approach to jurisdiction, I want to really honor those nations that are at the C92 table, because they've been very generous in sharing their experiences. I'm not going to identify them here. Some of them are in this audience, and they may wish to speak with you. But in general, these are the patterns. That Canada has two objectives at the table: to firewall itself from any liability and any growth in cost. It's seen those data about the increasing needs of kids, and it wants out now. Yeah? It wants to enter into 10-year funding agreements, just like the FSA. The question for you is, and they're fixed agreements. There isn't like you'll spend this, and if your needs of your community go higher, you'll get more. There's none of that. So watch out for that. It incentivizes jurisdiction down C92. Why isn't there money for nations who maybe want to draw down jurisdiction in inherent right? Why can't you get money to hire staff, do your community consult that way? It views First Nations laws only applicable in the home province. You then have to negotiate with every other province to get your law to have efficacy. And it also, Canada says, well, your law can be whatever you like, but this is only what we're going to fund. That's what I mean about Dean New's book. So your law might be broader than child welfare, but the money you're going to be getting is not. And you have to be very careful about not taking down jurisdiction and not being able to fulfill it, because the last thing we want to do is let our own kids down. It wants the tribunal orders out of the picture. It does not want to be before the tribunal. It does not want the tribunal's orders. In the final settlement agreement, they want all the orders to disappear. So that's something you have to think about. Like, are you prepared to give up that safeguard? And one of the words that really, really has bothered me a lot is the word engagement. I'm still in the dating phase with Canada. I'm not sure I'm showing up the next time. But they're not using the word consult. We're starting to use that language too sometimes, right? We'll engage with our young people. Well, what the heck does that mean, right? We have to use the proper language, honor of the crown, duty to consult. And we have to demand that of ourselves and every organization we work with, because that is affirming that self-government. It's very important. So when they're there when they show up, you should ask them, are you here fulfilling your duty to consult? Or if they use the word engagement, ask them to define it before they show up at the meeting and get it in writing. I also want to say a shout out to some of the public servants in the room. I used to be one of you. And it's not that I'm a non-smoker. I was on the front lines of doing child protection here in BC for about a decade, in the downtown east side and North Vancouver mostly. I remember the government was always trying to reform itself. It was saying that we did wrong in the past. And all of us around that table, we had a real strong commitment to kids, and we wanted to do better in the future. But the government has a culture. And I never remember the first day there, because I've always been a bit outspoken. I know that that's hard to believe. And when I was younger, I would say not as polished as I am today, and I still have things to learn from the amazing diplomats out there, like the late Joan Glode and others, who did this stuff in far better ways than I'll ever be able to do. But I remember they sent somebody down from Victoria to our office, which was a big thing. And they were bringing out a new rule that everybody had to have a Bachelor of Social Work to be a social worker in the Child Protection Ministry. That was the reform they were doing. They weren't going to deal with the addictions. They weren't going to deal with the poverty. They were going to make sure everybody had a Bachelor of Social Work degree. And so everybody lined up around the meeting room table, and the question was asked by this guy from Victoria, does anybody have any questions? And you could see the manager looking around, hoping no one put up their hand, because none of us are supposed to have questions. But I didn't know that, so I put up my hand. And I said, what data do you have to make sure that actually people with BSWs make better social workers? And the answer back was, well, you're young. When you've been around a while, you'll understand. And that was closely followed by the discussion with the supervisor later. There are 10 people out there waiting for your job, at which point I became really scared. Because I was just young, this was my first job, I was trying to make my family proud, trying to pay my rent. And then one day it dawned on me. I opened our office door. I looked left, I looked right, I looked straight ahead, and I looked behind me. There was nobody lined up. You have to own your own power to do the right thing. And for all of us in this room, when we see bureaucrats doing the right thing, we got to stand with them. Because the courage to stand against the government when you're in government is really tough. And we have to honor those people and lift them up and be there with them when they do it. That's how we get reform in government. Colonialism has us think only of one option. It takes away the creativity all of our ancestors have. So when you think about jurisdiction, think expansively, right? Think about being more creative and using these different types of things. You don't have to take it all on at once. In fact, I'd suggest that you don't do that. You do it in a very deliberate, careful approach to make sure you're set up for success and that you're learning lessons along the way. And by the way, the government was supposed to amend C-92 last year. They forgot about it, but I did not. And one of the big holes in there is there's no obligation for Canada to fund your laws. There's no recognition of other types of jurisdictional models. And it's too narrowly designed as a child welfare law. These are all opportunities to amend that piece of legislation and actually make it strong. Let's actually have the strongest law in the country should be about the kids. The strongest law for all adults, including those of us in this room and government, should be about the kids. This is not a very strong law, all right? So what are my key messages? I want you to be as courageous as the kids are, because we're going to need to be. We need to learn how to babble again. Thankfully, Grand Chief and Joan, I'm so glad you joined us, Joan. This is the amazing Joan. They have a grandson who can listen to babble, and so do you. And never forget that it is hard work standing in the winds of discrimination. But we can't be afraid to stand there. Because when we are, we leave our kids to stand there alone. And we gotta love our kids enough to tell them at every single moment that they're not alone. When they're being sexually abused, they're not alone. We're not gonna be silent, we're not gonna excuse it, we're gonna deal with it. When they're being bullied at school, they're not alone. When they're facing addictions or they've lost a parent to addictions, they're not alone. And when we fall short, we want all of you to hold us up and come to the rescue of that child. Because there will be weak moments in my life where I can't be there, but I know all of you will. So let's make jurisdiction hard and make sure it's only a tool. Because our kids aren't heading towards jurisdiction. They're heading towards being proud, being safe, being honored, being respected, being strong, and making one hell of a difference in this world. Thank you very much.
Could I have the steering committee, please? If the steering committee is here. Please join us up at the front. The steering committee. Wonderful.
And Spirit Bear and I are very sorry to dine and dash, but we have a courtroom to get to tomorrow.
Grand Chief and Joan, can you please join us as well? Well, we have our steering committee who is going to graciously honor Cindy Blackstock, Grand Chief Stewart, and Joan for their tireless work and commitment to our people, our children, our ancestors. We want to thank you for everything you've done for us, our people, our future. And like Cindy said, fall in love with the generation that we will never know. think we can say that these people have truly done that.
Before Cindy gets off the stage, I would just like to, I know she's, years ago when she went to Ottawa, we had thought she would only be gone. She thought she's only going to be gone for 2 years. It's been 22 years where she's been in a foreign land, in the belly of the beast in Ottawa for this fight. And I can honestly say I'm so happy and gracious that she's finally moved back to British Columbia. She's moved to Kamloops right now to be closer to her mother and to her family and to the place where she loves, and that's northern BC, where she came from. She always said she would come home eventually, but we didn't think it was going to take 22 years, so welcome home, Cindy. But the other thing, too, I just wanted you to know, so we're going to have to sing a song. So Cindy Blackstock, guess what day her birthday is? I can't even imagine what's more appropriate, but her birthday is on the National Day of Reconciliation, September 30th. And it will be Cindy's, can I say it, how old you're going to be? Cindy's 60th birthday. So let's sing happy birthday to Cindy because she won't be here. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Cindy. Happy birthday to you. Many more. We love you.
We love you all. Thank you very much. Safe travels, and everybody say a prayer that she kicks ass in court. So now, this is the first conference I've been at where we have a 30-minute break. Very generous, so you can smoke all you want, drink all the tea you want, watch a movie, watch TikTok, watch mine. No, I'm just kidding. So we have a 30-minute break until 11, and there's going to be coffee and tea in the other room, and we're going to come back here at 11 o'clock for a panel. I'm locking and chaining the door right at 11, so make sure you're here before that. So we'll see you back at 11 o'clock.